So welcome to the Clearwater Baha'i Center. The purpose of my talk this evening is to talk a little bit about food and health. It's really not intended to get too detailed or too scientifically oriented, but just a little bit about good health, and we'll talk a little bit about the Baha'i writings on the subject. I'll have a few slides on that, but really more about good health and general health and nutrition. We are here at the Clearwater Baha'i Center, and so most of the folks, not all, are Baha'is. Baha'is are people who believe in Baha'u'llah, similar to how Christians are followers of Jesus Christ. So let me give you a little bit of a... Let me just turn it on, there we go. A little bit of just a quick word in about the Baha'i faith. Since we are here at the center, I'd like to take a moment to start like this. The prophet founder of the Baha'i faith is Baha'u'llah. His name is a title that means the glory of God. Baha means glory, Allah meaning God. His eldest son and his chosen successor was Abdul Baha. Abdul Baha's name means the servant of the glory. If you'd like more information about the details of the faith, you can go to the official website, which is Baha'i.org, and you can read all kinds of wonderful things about the Baha'i faith. The Baha'i faith essentially teaches us that spiritual and physical aspects cannot be separated, but must be treated together like what's been referred to as two wings of the bird of civilization. In terms of some of the social teachings, the writings of Baha'u'llah are a message of upliftment and hope to humanity, with unity as its central principle and ultimate promise. So that the Baha'i faith essentially teaches that there is one God, that we are all part of one human family, and that religions are essentially from the same source. Some of the very basic tenets of the faith include teachings on peace. There are writings on human prosperity, writings that relate to the equality of men and women, the elimination of prejudice, the principles of global governance embodying the requirements of justice, and there's really actually quite a bit as it relates to the agreement of science and religion. So these teachings provide us a vision for the future and the spiritual sustenance to act on that vision. As it relates to the medical sciences, though, there are essentially three different tools of healing that the Baha'i writings talk about. The first being medical treatment, which I'll talk more about, obviously, prayer, and then joy and laughter. So there really is a lot when it comes to this subject, but I just chose a few quotes. And so I would encourage you to go back and read some of the writings because they're really quite elaborate. But in the Baha'i writing it states, whenever ye fall ill, refer to competent physicians. Whatever competent physicians or surgeons prescribe for a patient should be accepted and complied with. And here's the caveat, provided that they are adorned with the ornament of justice. So let's take another look at a passage that talks about justice. The Hidden Words is one of Baha'u'llah's most famous works that were written around 1857 and were in Arabic and also written in Farsi. And one of the hidden words goes something like this: O Son of Spirit, the best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. Turn not away therefrom if thou desirest me, and neglect it not that I may confide in thee. By its aid thou shalt see with thine own eyes, and not through the eyes of others, and shalt know of thine own knowledge, and not through the knowledge of thy neighbor. Ponder this in thy heart, how it behooveth thee to be. Verily, justice is my gift to thee, and a sign of my loving kindness. Set it then before thine eyes. So let me bring your attention to that part where I have underlined, by its aid thou shalt see with thine own eyes, and not through the eyes of others, and shalt know of thine own knowledge, and not through the knowledge of thy neighbor. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, I think that it means that we are charged with the responsibility of independent investigation, that we have to avoid accepting things on blind faith. And this is an area that even the medical community sometimes falls into that sort of thinking. If you were to actually take a look at what's referred to as the evidence pyramid, we'll see that it shows us where opinion statements are on the tier of evidence. What you see is that at the bottom of the pyramid are our least clinically relevant types of studies or research studies, and at the very top, systematic reviews and meta-analyses, we find that those are the most clinically relevant. And where do you see opinion statements? Sort of at the bottom. So opinion statements for various organizations and all, we have to take some of this with a grain of salt. We have to understand that that's all fine and well, but opinion statements are not at the highest part of the tier. They're actually closer to the bottom of the tier. So going back to some of the Baha'i writings on the subject, it states, do not neglect medical treatment when it is necessary, but leave it off when health has been restored. Treat disease through diet, by preference, refraining from the use of drugs. And if you find what is required in a single herb, do not resort to a compounded medication. Abstain from drugs when health is good, but administer them when necessary. I think that it's interesting that the word that is used is not just to prevent disease through diet. It says to treat disease with diet. So prevention is obvious, but there's actually some reference in the Baha'i writings about the use of nutrition and diet for treatment as well. And I think it's pretty common knowledge that nutrition and diet play a role in prevention, but what is not clear is the fact that nutrition and diet is also indicated for the treatment of disease. In terms of prayer, which was one of those other three modes of healing, Abdu'l-Baha states that there are two ways of healing sickness, material means and spiritual means, so not just one or the other. The first is by the use of remedies, of medicines. The second consists in praying to God and in turning to Him. Both means should be used and practiced. And as it refers to joy and laughter, in the selections of the writings of Abdu'l-Baha, he states, O thou distinguished physician, matters related to man's spirit have a great effect on his bodily condition. For instance, thou shouldest impart gladness to thy patient, give him comfort and joy, and bring him to ecstasy and exaltation. How often hath it occurred that this hath caused the early recovery? Therefore, treat thou the sick with both powers. Spiritual feelings have a surprising effect on healing nervous ailments. So, let's take this information and see how we can apply it to the state of health in the United States. But first, I think we have to know where we stand. We have to have a starting point. Here is a slide that essentially shows you the United States as it stands in terms of healthcare expenditures as it relates to other countries. What you see is that we're essentially spending more money on healthcare than any other nation, or at least we're at the top. Yet the rate of chronic disease remains highest in the United States. You know, for a nation that's really bent on just say no, we sure are over-medicated. The other thing to take into consideration is that as a percentage of income, the United States people in the United States spend a very small amount of money on their food. So we need to take a closer look at this. The pattern of eating in America can be characterized or referred to as the standard American diet. This is characterized by a diet that's essentially high in refined sugar, refined flour, preservatives, additives, pesticides, hormones, trans fats, animal protein, caffeine, alcohol, artificial chemicals, sweeteners, and fats. Is there anybody that would disagree with me on this? Is this pretty standard? Yeah, this is the standard American diet, which is pretty sad. Yeah, pretty sad. So, so let's take a look at what these so-called weapons of mass destruction have been doing. What you're about to see are a series of slides that essentially look at the obesity trends for the past 25 years. I'm going to kind of go through these slides sort of quickly. Some of you have seen these slides before. They're actually very popular and they're all over the web. So let's start back in 1985. So the black means that those states, we didn't have any data on them. And the light blue illustrates that less than 10% of that state was considered obese. And if it's in the darker blue, 10 to 14% falls into that category of being obese, which is considered to be 30 pounds over your healthy weight. You can see in 1986, we now have a little bit more data, and there are more states joining the obesity trend. In 1987, we see even more states that are considered obese. In 1988, that number grows. In 1989, it continues to grow. So far, it's just going uphill. Now we see that almost every state, or the majority of the states, fall in that 10 to 14% category. Now we have a new color. This darker purplish color represents 15 to 19% of individuals who are obese. And it continues to grow in 1992, 1993, 1994, 1995, 96. New color. Yellow is 15% or higher. 20, yeah, thank you. There's Alaska. There's 2000. Up, new color. Anybody know what state that is? That's right. Oops, okay. 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005. Okay, now we have a new category. Greater than 30%. 2006, 2007. Anybody know what that blue state is? Yep. That's it. Then I didn't have data for 2008 and 9, but here's the data for 2010. And we see that it's not looking good, right? It's not looking good. Yeah. So, there are many reasons or many theories as to why we get fat. But ultimately, I think what it boils down to is a quantity and a quality issue. There are many factors that affect that, but I'm just going to spend a little bit of time taking a look at starting at the quantity issue. So let's take a look at some of these slides. Anybody ever see? I don't know if you've seen these before. So 20 years ago, an average bagel was about 140 calories. Today, how many calories do you think are in this bagel? Mm-hmm. How long will you have to rake leaves in order to burn those extra 210 calories? 50 minutes. Okay, 20 years ago, you had a burger, about 333 calories. Today, 590. How long will you have to lift weights in order to burn the extra 257 calories? Okay, 20 years ago. Notice the dish is even smaller. Have you ever looked at your grandmother's dishes? Much smaller, huh? 500 calories for a cup of spaghetti with sauce and 3 small meatballs. Today, how many calories do you think are in today's portion of spaghetti and meatballs? And how long would you have to house clean? A long time. A couple hours. Fries, 210 calories 20 years ago. How many calories are in today's portions of fries? And we're not even talking about the acrylamide toxins that are created when you deep fry a potato, right? We're just talking calories. We're keeping it simple. How long would you have to walk leisurely in order to burn that? Over an hour. 20 years ago, soda pop, 85 calories. Today, probably even more than that, depending on what you're drinking. How long would you have to work in the garden to burn those extra calories? 35 minutes. 20 years ago, a sandwich, 320 calories. Today, a sub. How many calories are in today's turkey sandwich? Yeah, don't kid yourself. That bun's loaded. How long would you have to ride a bike in order to burn those calories? An hour and 25. And right now, all we're talking about is calories, right? We're just talking about quantity. We haven't even gotten to quality yet. Coffee. Cup of coffee versus today. How long would you have to walk in order to burn those extra? Somebody was close, about an hour and 20. That's based on a 130-pound person. Muffins. Oh yeah, muffins. 210 calories 20 years ago. Today, close. How long would you have to vacuum in order to burn those extra 290 calories? Pizza. 500 calories 20 years ago. That's just if you have 2 slices. About 850 calories for a couple slices. Don't forget the big thing of soda pop next to it. How long would you have to play golf while walking and carrying your clubs in order to burn those extra 350 calories? About an hour, based on a 160-pound person. Okay, so you get the idea, right? You get the idea. So there are many different popular diets out there that address this issue. You will see that there are low-carb diets, carbohydrate-focused diets, low-fat diets, novelty diets, meal replacement diets. You know, there's a diet for everything, right? Yeah, there's all kinds of books out there, all sorts of stuff. And by the way, I'm not anti any of this. Some of this is really good stuff, but there's a lot out there, so it's no wonder people get mixed messages. And let's face it, diet and nutrition is that one subject that everybody thinks they're an expert on, right? Invariably, whenever I attend any kind of meeting, I usually don't have to say much because everybody else is the expert. They have something to say about diet and nutrition. Your hairstylist has something to say about diet and nutrition. Your friend, your your lawn mowing guy. Everybody has something to say because it's something that we do every day, and it's a big part, obviously a huge part of life is our food. This is just another exhaustive list of all kinds of popular diets out there and various books and their characteristics. And despite it all, in the United States, we seem to be getting fatter and fatter, even though we've introduced more and more weight loss diets, calorie restriction, more low-fat diets, high-protein diets than any other culture has ever known in the history of the human species. We continue to see more and more disease, diabetes, vascular problems, kidney failure, neurologic problems. What industry do you think the obesity and disease drives? Yes, I'm sure pharmaceutical. is it really just about calories in and calories out? In other words, is weight control really just about controlling calories? Well, that's one aspect, right? Calories count. But could it be that food is actually information? Food is more than just the calories that we measure. Food has the ability to act as signaling molecules that actually send a message to your DNA, and your DNA then responds to that by creating certain types of proteins. And those proteins go on to then be proteins that can cause inflammation or promote inflammation, or what we call pro-inflammatory, or they can be anti-inflammation. Let me just go back for a moment and explain something. So when you are, no matter what, even if you're not a child growing, we're always regenerating tissue. How does our body know to get that information to regenerate tissue? It needs to go to the DNA, because the DNA is the template. That's where the essence of that information is. It's in the DNA. Now, anything in your body that has a function, anything that's important in your body is what? It's a protein. Hormones are proteins. Enzymes are proteins. Brain chemicals, neurotransmitters are proteins. Immunoglobulins, which are antibodies, are proteins. Muscle tissue is protein. Connective tissue is protein. Channels, pores, receptors, these are all proteins. And if something is a protein, that means your DNA had to make it. Your body gets the template for that protein from your DNA. But that DNA is influenced by certain what we call epigenetic factors. The word epi, or the prefix epi, means on top of. So nutrition and drugs have the ability, and other environmental factors have the ability to send messages to your DNA that can actually modulate or modify the way your DNA actually expresses itself. So these proteins that then act as good guys doing good things in your body that keep you healthy, or bad guys doing bad things such as cause inflammation. So what kind of information do you think sugar and artificial chemicals and trans fats and those sorts of things are going to send to your genes? What kind of good things or messages do you want to expose your genes to? Messages of health or messages of disease? This looks like a complicated slide, but actually it's a very simple message. In the top right-hand corner, what you see is an illustration of a Mediterranean-style type of looking salad with some fish. And the idea is that those foods are what we might consider anti-inflammatory. Why? Because the nutrients and the molecules in those foods then go on to send a message to the DNA. The DNA takes that message, and when your body then goes on to generate proteins, it creates what we call anti-inflammatory proteins that are responsible for things like reducing reducing constriction and increasing airways. And on the other side, what we see are foods that are pro-inflammatory. What do we mean by that? Well, they have certain molecules in them that go on to send messages to your DNA, and your DNA takes that and then translates that into molecules or proteins. And technically we call them cytokines, proteins that are pro-inflammatory. So the idea that food is information is essentially related to this concept that your DNA is affected by your environment. And being that food is something that you do every day, you eat every day, at least a few times a day, there's going to be a strong effect from food. Actually, this entire science is called nutritional genomics, or if you contract the words together, it's called nutrigenomics. And there's really a lot of very interesting data. There's many papers on the subject. It's not something that I think that all healthcare professionals are aware of yet, but certainly since the Human Genome Project was completed only 7 years ago, and we have identified all 30,000 genes, the science of nutritional genomics and of epigenetics has just skyrocketed. So the data out there is very solid, very solid. And folks, anyone who says there's not enough data isn't reading the data, right? Because there's plenty of data. let me just take a little twist and talk to you about this word which I've mentioned before in my previous talks. And there's this term called phytochemicals. And if you've never heard of this term, I'd really like for you to really familiarize yourself with this term. Phytochemicals, sometimes we refer to it as phytonutrient. The prefix phyto is Greek for plant. So phytonutrients are those substances that give those foods their unique color, taste, aroma, or fragrance. So examples might be lycopene in tomatoes, resveratrol in grapes and peanut skins, sulforaphanes in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, zeaxanthins, which are found in foods like yellow bell peppers, lignans found in flax, isoflavones in soy, and anthocyanins in raspberries. So we're really moving, the field of nutritional medicine is moving beyond just basic vitamins and minerals. In fact, the science and the research on phytonutrients is vast. It's really vast, and these are just some examples of some of those phytonutrients. Another important message that you really should understand about phytonutrients is that it's not about any one phytonutrient. You know, some drug companies today are trying to patent certain chemical compounds based on the research that's available on resveratrol. You know, resveratrol, a lot of research is being done on resveratrol because we're finding that this particular phytonutrient seems to have a very interesting positive effect on your longevity genes. They're called the sirtuins. These are genes that are involved in age and longevity. And so, you know, because there's been so much research on resveratrol, certain drug companies are now trying to develop drugs, but it's difficult because resveratrol is a natural compound and you can't patent something that's natural. Nevertheless, my point is that, you know, what I don't want you to walk away with thinking is that there's some magical one vitamin now that you should, or phytonutrient that you should now focus on. Because the world of nutrition is really very different, and the science and the way you study nutrition is really very different than drugs. You know, when drugs, let's say you're studying an antihypertensive, a drug for blood pressure. You're looking at one molecule that has one function for one outcome. Simple, linear. With nutrition, it doesn't work that way. When you bite into an apple or an orange, you're not just eating vitamin C. There are many, many nutrients that work together in synergy. And so the additive and synergistic effect of phytochemicals of fruits and vegetables have been proposed to be responsible for their potent antioxidant and health-promoting benefits. It's the complex mixture of phytochemicals. It's a diet of diversity that is what makes us healthy, not the diet of white, refined flour, refined sugar. This explains why no single antioxidant as a chemical agent can replace the combination of natural phytochemicals in achieving the observed health benefits. Thousands of phytochemicals are present in whole foods. I just listed for you just a few. The balanced combination of phytochemicals present in fruits and vegetables can't simply be mimicked by pills containing a single nutrient. So, what happens if you chronically, not just every now and then, but day in and day out, expose those genes, your DNA, to that bad information? Too much bad information puts your body in this heightened state of alarm. This can cause this war within that we call inflammation. When I walk and I stub my toe, and my toe gets big and red and inflamed, that's a good thing. That's a normal, healthy response. But when your body is constantly in a state of inflammation, this is not a good thing. This can actually cause your body to deteriorate, and it can trigger autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease is a type of a disease where your body starts to attack its own tissue. And so being in a chronic state of inflammation is not good. In fact, we know that there are many drugs out there that are anti-inflammatories, right? And anti-inflammatory drugs work by how? They are actually inhibiting certain molecules that the DNA then goes on to make that are pro-inflammatory. For example, NSAIDs. NSAIDs are your non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, i.e. Advil, right? Aspirin, corticosteroids. How do they work? They inhibit the DNA from making certain pro-inflammatory nasty proteins like NF-kappa B. These are just examples of certain types of proteins, but the problem is that they're very, very powerful and they have very, very strong side effects. Okay, because not all pro-inflammatory substances are all bad. What I'm trying to say is that it's too much that's not good. It's too much. But if you have an ant problem, the solution is not to bomb the house. It's just to, it needs to measure to the problem. So what I'm trying to say is that certain anti-inflammatory drugs can have a positive effect, but sometimes they're just too strong. So the inflammatory process can begin at the embryonic stage of development. The health of the mother, even before she conceives, is very important. Remember that, this is another subject, but again, the health of the mother, because the nutrition that she exposes to herself to ultimately affects her DNA, and that's ultimately going to affect her fetus, her baby. So we kind of already talked about that. What is inflammation? This, I thought, was an interesting way. The word inflammation suggests fire within. So this poor guy couldn't possibly be too happy. Fat is a major source of silent inflammation. These various words that you see, interleukins, interleukin-1, IL-1, IL-6, IL-8, IL-10, TNF-alpha, etc. These are all what we call pro-inflammatory proteins or cytokines that are produced that cause inflammation. This guy is on fire. Well, he is fat, but the thing about obesity and fat tissue is that we once used to think that fat tissue was sort of inert, right? That it was just more about being uncomfortable and being overweight. But we now know that fat tissue actually secretes proteins that are pro-inflammatory, exacerbating your inflammatory disorder. So how are these inflammatory messengers made? By the toxic foods that we eat, by the drugs that we take, the pollutants that we inhale, poor intestinal health, poor detoxification, the lack of proper nutrients, the lack of activity and exercise, and being overweight in and of itself exacerbates that problem. And here's where it starts. Eating eating from a package while being distracted by the television. Many of the conditions related to obesity are listed here. Everything from arthritis, breast cancer, heart disease, colorectal cancer, type 2, endometrial cancer, end-stage renal disease, gallbladder disease, hypertension, liver disease, back pain, renal cell cancer, obstructive sleep apnea, stroke, urinary incontinence, sexual dysfunction, infertility, fatigue, depression, all of these things, which ultimately and automatically means that there's a nutritional component. What I'm saying is that when it comes to chronic disease, nutrition plays a role in just about every chronic disease. Now, when it comes to acute care, right, you're having a heart attack, don't take them to a nutritionist, take them to the ER. Right? If you're having an asthma attack, don't bring them to me, ER. When it comes to chronic disease, nutrition. You have to start with nutrition, and then sometimes you need some drugs, right? So alternative medicine is really drug therapy, and one day it will be. So again, the diseases that inflammation plays a big role in, again, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, GI disorders, Crohn's, colitis, even irritable bowel, hormonal-related disorders, fibromyalgia, which is not just in your head, chronic fatigue, skin rashes, your eczemas, all of these have a nutrition component, because if you're eating a diet that's poor, that's pro-inflammatory, and you have eczema, could you possibly be making your skin condition better? Absolutely not. So that nutrition consult should be as just a part of a natural workup that every physician orders. Patient needs CBC, patient needs this, nutrition consult. Every single patient needs to see or receive some kind of nutrition education. And if they don't, this is malpractice. Autoimmune diseases, lupus, RA, type 1, Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's is the autoimmune disease associated with thyroid. 90% of all patients with hypothyroid disease are Hashimoto's. Graves' disease, MS, so the list goes on. What I thought was very interesting about this slide, This came out of the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, published in 2007. What these guys did was basically look at 13 different eating patterns. And then what they did was they looked at various biomarkers, including weight, waist circumference, steatosis, which is fat in the stool, insulin sensitivity. DNL stands for de novo lipogenesis, which is the making of fat from carbohydrate, which is not a good thing, inflammation, total cholesterol, total triglycerides, HDL, which is your good cholesterol, and LDL, which is your bad cholesterol. And of these various eating patterns, they found, and I'm sure it's not easy for you to see the names of all the different diets up there, but does anybody have an idea which one of these came out with the best results? So the Mediterranean eating pattern was the one eating pattern that had a positive effect in every single measured biomarker. So what exactly is this Mediterranean diet? Well, there's really not a Mediterranean diet. It's more like an eating pattern where there's a higher emphasis on fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains. What's a whole grain? A grain that's still got its fiber intact. So we're not talking about white flour. Remember the diet of white bad, diet of diversity good. Nuts, legumes. What are legumes? Beans. Fish and olive oil. A decreased emphasis on poultry, dairy, red meat, and even red wine. A lot of people think that the Mediterranean diet is all about wine. No, it's not. Not necessarily. And so studies conclude that this diet leads to improvements in all of those markers that we were looking at: lipid profiles, insulin sensitivity, blood pressure, cardiovascular health, BMI, which stands for body mass index, which is a measure of height, weight, and inflammatory markers. So overall, the Mediterranean diet appears to be high in these healthy fats and various other substances, including, what is that word we now know? Phytonutrients or phytochemicals. This was another study that reports on the Okinawan diet, which is similar to the Mediterranean diet, and these guys, I know there's a lot of writing there. It says, research suggests that diets associated with a reduced risk of chronic diseases are similar to the traditional Okinawan diet, that is vegetable and fruit heavy, therefore phytonutrient and antioxidant rich, but reduced in meat, refined grains, saturated fats, sugar, salt, and full fat dairy products. Features in these diets are likely contributing to a decreased risk for cardiovascular disease, some cancers, and other chronic diseases through multiple mechanisms. It's not like drug therapy where there's one molecule, one function, one outcome. Multiple mechanisms, including reduced oxidative stress. Traditional Okinawan diet is the lowest in saturated fat, very high intake of antioxidant-rich yet low-calorie orange, yellow root vegetables. What did we say was responsible for giving fruits and vegetables their color? Phytonutrients, such as sweet potatoes, green leafy vegetables. And this, now this is very interesting. You know, every 5 years, the USDA comes out with the USDA guidelines for health, for nutrition. 2005, now it's 2010, and those have just come out, and they're very similar to 2005, where they really emphasize carbohydrates at the bottom of the food guide pyramid, you know. And so these guys, this was a study done out of UNC Chapel Hill, and these guys just came out with this report recently, and here's what they say, that the dietary guidelines for the Americans Committee report does not provide sufficient evidence to conclude that increases in carbohydrate and decreases in dietary fat and protein will lead to positive health outcomes. So it is not necessarily uniformly agreed on that the food guide pyramid is the proper way to eat. In fact, the rate of various chronic diseases have not gone down since we've instituted that. Okay, so the part you've been waiting for, okay? How am I doing on time? Okay. So what do I eat, right? I just had to do that. I was playing with my PowerPoint. Okay. There were so many to choose from. This list does not mean that these are the only foods that I would consider superfoods, but these are just some of the top ones. And I would come up with 5, and I would say, no, one more. Then 5 became 6, and then 6 became 7, and then I had to take it up to 10. And I think I don't know, I think I have about 15 here. But so these are superfoods that I've sort of picked out that have powerful health benefits. And there are so many, but I'm just going to kind of go through them with you now. So, first, consider that these are loaded with phytonutrients that are not necessarily vitamins. Again, remember, phytonutrients are not vitamins and minerals. They are these other substances that give fruits and vegetables their color and aroma, non-vitamin, non-mineral components in food that provide health benefits. They're proven to prevent or help prevent and reverse aging, cardiovascular disease, type 2, hypertension, which is high blood pressure, certain cancers, dementia, and extend your health span. Okay. Beans, which are an excellent source of protein, fiber, B vitamins, which are all involved in energy-producing pathways, iron, phytonutrients. Blueberries, one of the foods highest in antioxidants, such as camphorol, anthocyanins, vitamin C, fiber. Those top 2 words are phytonutrients. And again, there are thousands of them. Broccoli, one of the most powerful foods in one's dietary arsenal against cancer. I can't tell you how many studies there are out there on the sulforaphanes in cancer. Remember, when you go to the physician's office, you have drug reps, but where is the food rep? There is no food rep. Why is there no food rep? There is no one who's going to make money telling you to eat broccoli. It is not profit-driven. And I'm not suggesting that the pharmaceutical industry is only about money, but let's face it. Drugs are not cheap, and food is not promoted, right? You don't go to the doctor and see the food rep. There's no such thing. Do our medical students take nutrition? Not necessarily. In fact, you're one of the lucky ones if you got one lecture on nutrition. And how much I teach human nutrition. I've taught human nutrition one semester course for 15 years, and I just scratch the surface. I'm just scratching the surface when I teach that class. There is no way that you can take one human nutrition course, even as a medical student, and walk away thinking that you know much about human nutrition. Absolutely no way. So the number of studies out there published in PubMed, the world's largest scientific database, are vast and detailed and well done. But they remain in the world of the academians. And this little silo of the world of the academians doesn't tend to cross over in the world of the clinicians. In fact, there's something like a 50 to 100 year tipping point. It takes about 50 to 100 years to for the information that's done in this world to eventually get to this world. Oats. Oats can lower cholesterol, especially some of the bad cholesterol, but you can't eat oats and then go eat your McDonald's burgers and think it's going to do anything, right? So you have to be careful. Oranges, packed with vitamin C, fiber, folic acid. Folic acid is another incredible nutrient that's more than just something we take in a prenatal to prevent neural tube defects. There are studies about folic acid as it relates to depression, stroke, cardiovascular disease, all sorts of things. Cinnamon. There were some incredible studies done out of Johns Hopkins in 2005 that showed that cinnamon had a powerful anti-glycemic effect, meaning a substance that helped control blood sugars. But again, you can't go eating a diet filled with sugar and carbohydrates and sprinkle a little cinnamon on your oats and think it's going to do much. So it's all about the synergy of the whole diet together. Sunflower seeds, excellent source of vitamin E, magnesium, anti-inflammatory in nature, prevents free radicals from oxidizing cholesterol, and I want to talk a little bit about that word in a moment. Calms the nerves, muscles, blood vessels, because that's magnesium that's in the sunflower seeds doing that. Improve detox and cancer prevention. Just a quick word about free radicals and magnesium. When a woman is giving birth and she becomes something called eclampsic. Have you ever heard of eclampsia? Eclampsia, when her blood pressure goes through the roof during childbirth. Are they going to give her an antihypertensive? No. They're not going to give her an antihypertensive. She's got a baby. What are they going to give her to lower that blood pressure like that? They're going to give her an IV bag of magnesium. because magnesium lowers blood pressure. It's a natural calcium channel blocker, right? So if you exercise, if you change your diet and you add a little magnesium, blood pressure goes down. No need for an antihypertensive. Oh, I wanted to go back and mention something about the free radicals. I think that I need to take a moment just to clarify this. I think it's so important that we understand some of these terms that get thrown out there. Electrons like to hang out in pairs. When they are stripped apart, we call them free electrons. Sometimes we call them free radicals. Free radicals are really damaging. They do a lot of damage to different structures inside your cells. And what they like to do is they want to be coupled up with another electron. So what they do is they kind of look around for other stabilized electron pairs and they rip them apart to stabilize themselves. Sort of like these promiscuous little things that go around looking for stabilized electrons to rip apart and stabilize themselves. And when that's stable, then what do you have? You got another free radical. Bill knows all this already. You got another free radical. That's not good. So that free radical goes around and does the same thing. And when this cascades out of control, what do you have? Cancer, right? So an antioxidant is a nutrient that finds those free radicals and couples up with them and quenches them and stabilizes them so they don't do damage. And those come from what? Fruits and vegetables, right? Fruits. Now you can take supplements, but it's probably better to get them from where God put them, which is in your fresh fruits and vegetables. Now imagine, you take one puff of that cigarette, you are introducing thousands and thousands and thousands of free radicals every time you puff, right? You better make sure you're getting enough antioxidants in your diet, because it can go wrong if something goes wrong and you have free radicals spiraling out of control. You're going to get cancer, and we know that. Soy. Now, soy is a funny one because soy in its whole food form can be a wonderful food when eaten in moderation. But in the United States, soy has really been modified. And we have a lot of processed food soy burgers, soy chips, soy formula, soy milk. And I'm not against eating whole food soy, foods that are whole foods, tofu, the real thing, soybeans, edamame. But I don't ever recommend or prescribe any of my patients to eat processed soy food. Besides the fact that in the United States, they're all genetically modified. Some of you know this, some of you don't. In the United States, all soy is genetically modified, which means that they take a soy gene and they artificially penetrate the gene with another gene to make that soy resistant to Roundup. Do you know what Roundup is? Roundup is the pesticide that's sprayed on the soy. And what happens is when you GMO a soy, when you genetically modify the soybean, and then you spray your Roundup, the soy isn't killed, but all the weeds are. Now, the FDA approved this based on the industry coming to the FDA to convince them. And in Canada, when the researchers questioned this, they were let go. The majority of the world forbids GMOs, but not the United States, which is why we have such an export problem. We can't get rid of it. All of your corn is genetically modified. And of course, corn isn't everything. So all of the soy and all the corn is genetically modified. And then that gets into a conversation about, okay, so is that bad for you? And what you see is that there is data that suggests that it is. But that's another subject. So soy. Soy has the potential of being fantastic if you're eating whole foods. It's an inexpensive source of protein, excellent for vegetarians, lots of fiber, excellent source of omegas, excellent phytonutrients, the isoflavones. Soy can potentially be a wonderful food. Salmon. Notice I wrote wild salmon and not your farm-raised salmon, which is an excellent source of protein. I do not recommend or prescribe farm-raised salmon because of the sludge that they swim in, not to mention the fact that you know what we feed fish? Corn. right? And 85% of it comes in from overseas. So if you're going to eat salmon, go for the wild. Spinach, excellent source of a variety of nutrients. In a study on the relationship between the risk of prostate cancer and vegetable intake, including the vegetables spinach, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, mustard greens, turnip greens, collards, and kale, only spinach showed evidence of the significant protection against the occurrence of aggressive prostate cancer. Walnuts. Eating a handful of these a day may reduce your chance of having a heart attack by as much as 51%. You show me a drug that can do that, and I will tell you that that would be on the cover of Time magazine tomorrow. And shareholders would be on their yachts celebrating if you could find a drug that could do that. Green tea. Green tea is an excellent source of something called catechins. They're inexpensive, no calories, relaxation, tastes good, lowers blood pressure, reduces cancer risk as part of an overall healthy diet. Turmeric. Now here's something I grew up with a lot of in my diet. Thank you, Mom. God bless my mother. She didn't go to school for nutrition, but somehow she knew. She just knew. The major spice in curry, a member of the ginger family, used in Ayurvedic medicine since ancient times. Over 1,900 scientific papers have been published on curcumin. You go in the health food stores and they're all over these little red tablets. Where do you get? Do you find that naturally in food? Turmeric. Turmeric is a spice. That's in all that Persian food that you eat. Do I make tea out of it and drink it? Oh, you can, but you generally use it in food, in cooking. In cooking, and you can take tablets of it or in cooking. Yes, Indian food, thank you. Tomatoes, an excellent source of lycopene that helps to prevent cancer. Sweet potato, high in the plant form of vitamin A, which is called beta-carotene. Low fat, excellent healthy carbs for sustained energy. Yogurt contributes to the balance of healthy bacteria in the intestines, excellent source of calcium and certain B vitamins. Don't underestimate how important that healthy bacteria is. You know, you've got 100 trillion bacteria that take up some serious real estate in your intestinal tract, right? Very important. Do you know, an intestinal lining or intestinal tract without healthy bacteria, to me, is like a computer system with no virus protection. You're an open book. You're susceptible. You'll get sick a lot. It's going to be very important that you make sure that you get this healthy bacteria, which generally comes from things like yogurt and kefir. You can find it in the form of tablets, and they're called, anybody know what they're called? Probiotics, right? Now, one reason why you would definitely want to re-inoculate or re-put back in healthy bacteria is what? If you've been on a antibiotic, because antibiotics are not specific to pathogens or pathogenic bacteria. They're going to kill everything. So it's very important that anytime you're on an antibiotic, that immediately when you're done with that antibiotic, you should be on probiotics. And you'll be shocked when you hear the amount. You can go to the health food store and you'll find products that will give you something on the order of 1 billion live cultures, and you'll think, wow, 1 billion, is that safe? But I'm here to tell you that 1 billion is kind of like what I would call spitting in the ocean. It's nothing. It's daily, it's maintenance. A really good product would be something more like 60 billion live cultures, and you'd have to do that regularly just to get the healthy bacteria back in there to re-inoculate the gut. Avocados, excellent for men's prostate health, improves the body's ability to absorb. Dark chocolate has more flavonols than apples, cherries, red wine, and tea. 70% cocoa or high. Extra virgin olive oil reduces the risk for breast and colon cancer, lowers blood pressure, improves cardiovascular health, excellent source of vitamin E. Garlic. My dad likes to eat garlic for breakfast. He knows. It's an anti-inflammatory, has antiviral properties, has been used to treat stroke, cancer, immune disorders, etc. Honey. Treatment for respiratory diseases, skin ulcers, wounds, urinary diseases, dandruff, believe it or not. Darker the honey, higher level of antioxidants. Kiwi helps prevent asthma, osteoarthritis, colon cancer, reduces the risk of stroke, cancer, and heart disease. Onions, reduces the risk of heart disease by 20%, lowers your risk of cancers of the lungs, brain, stomach, esophagus. Pomegranate, now there's another one that I grew up with. Thank you to Dad. Do you know my dad would take the time to peel the little pomegranate seeds and put them in a cup for us? Do you know how long it takes to do that? That's love. That is love. They have 2 to 3 times the antioxidant power of equal amounts of green tea or red wine. Apples have been proved to be a potent weapon against cancer, heart disease, asthma, type 2 diabetes, compared with other fruits and vegetables. I think this is very interesting. This is just an article that tries to drive this important point home regarding synergy, where the authors state, regular consumption of fruit and vegetables is associated with reduced risks of cancer, cardiovascular disease, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, cataracts, and some of the functional declines associated with aging. We propose that the additive and synergistic effects of phytochemicals in fruits and vegetables are responsible for their potent antioxidant and anti-cancer activities. See, they didn't say vitamin and mineral, they said the phytonutrient. And that the benefit of a diet rich in fruit and vegetables is attributed to the complex mixture of phytochemicals present in whole foods. And here, I'll just read where it's underlined. In plants, these compounds function to attract beneficial and repel harmful organisms. They serve as photoprotectants and respond to environmental changes. In humans, they can have complementary and overlapping actions, including antioxidant effects. Now you know antioxidant, what that's all about. A modulation of detox enzymes, stimulation of the immune system, reduction of inflammation, modulation meaning modifying steroid metabolism, and antibacterial and antiviral effects. Can you show me a drug that can do all of that? Right? There's no such thing. I want to mention this book to you. This is, I think, one of my favorites out there when it comes to information about food and the phytonutrients in food and the effect on health, by Dr. James Joseph, PhD researcher who I've had the privilege of speaking with at various medical conferences, who is a researcher at USDA Tufts, Boston. Do I have time to get into this, or should I stop? Okay, I'll try to go fast, but not too fast. Just because I get asked all the time, right? And I thought, well, this is a valid question. Let's go over it. Are organics really better? Let's find out. That is the seal. If you see a seal like that on a food product, that means that it is certified USDA organic, which has, there are federal regulations that require food manufacturer to have certain guidelines before they're allowed to have that seal on their food. Okay, so the increase in the number of studies published since 2000. In the years since 2001, more than 40 new studies have been published, increasing the number of peer-reviewed studies comparing the nutritional quality of organic and conventional foods to over 100. So, in this particular interesting study that was done in March of 2008, they looked at polyphenols. Now, I just want to say this word polyphenols. Whenever you see this word polyphenols are just like a type of phytonutrient. And in the research, they tend to use that word a lot. So don't let that throw you off. Polyphenols, just think phytonutrient, okay? Phytochemical, same thing. Polyphenol, antioxidant, phytonutrients. So they looked at these, they looked at a few different vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin C, and I don't remember, I can't see underneath my slide there. A couple of minerals, they looked at potassium, they looked at phosphorus, they looked at nitrates, and they looked at protein. The results were basically that the organic samples contained significantly higher concentrations of polyphenols and antioxidants. All right, again, what are phytonutrients? Phytonutrients are the substances in plants and plant foods other than your traditional vitamins and minerals that confer health benefit. Polyphenols are a type of phytonutrient, just to reiterate. Sometimes we refer to them as secondary metabolites. So if you see that in the research, that's what that means. They have antioxidant properties and antimicrobial properties. In this particular study, the author states, in tomato purees, no difference in carotenoid content, that's a type of phytonutrient, was found between the two modes of culture, whereas the concentrations of vitamin C and polyphenols remained higher in purees made out of the organic tomatoes. In this study, the author writes, consequently, it can be concluded that organically produced plant-derived food products have a higher nutritional value, including antioxidants, than conventional ones. Furthermore, due to the fact that there is a lower level of contamination in organic crops, the risk of diseases caused by contaminated food is significantly reduced. In this study, the author writes, a potential advantage of organic agriculture in producing healthy foods is based on higher concentrations of beneficial secondary plant substances, again, phytonutrients, in organically grown crops compared to non-organically grown crops. Organic agriculture has been confirmed as environmentally sound and more sustainable than mainstream agriculture. In this study, the author states, differences in macronutrients, what are macronutrients? Proteins, carbs, and fats, were marginal, whereas antioxidant vitamins and phenolic compounds, again, that word that refers to phytonutrients, concentration markedly differed among cultivations. Ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C, alpha-gamma tocopherols, those are referring to your E's, and beta-carotene, that's a plant form of A, were higher in organic plums. And in this study, statistically higher levels of total polyphenols were consistently found in organically and sustainably grown foods as compared to those produced by conventional agricultural practices. In this study, these data provide evidence that an improvement in the antioxidant defense system of the plant occurred as a consequence of the organic cultivation practice. In this study, the purpose of this article is to review the literature produced over the last 50 years comparing the nutritional quality of organic with conventional crops. Whereas few studies have been conducted, there is a trend in the data indicating higher nutrient content in organically grown crops. This was done in 1998. Okay, we've known about this for more than a decade. This is not just something new. This is not just the green movement. We've known. Look who did this study. This is the USDA. Now, if you read the mission statement of the USDA, that's the United States Department of Agriculture, you will see that part of their mission statement is that they are to promote conventional agriculture. Okay, those are the words. USDA's own study showed, results from the study showed that blueberry fruit grown from organic culture yields significantly higher sugars, fructose and glucose, malic acid, which is a type of, another type of nutrient, total phenolics, there's that word again, total anthocyanins, that's another type of phytonutrient in blueberries, and antioxidant activity than fruit from conventional culture. Do you get the point? Organic farming of mandarin oranges resulted in juices with higher contents of mineral and carotenoids and of better sensory quality. Ooh, and it even tasted better. Oops. This is just a study that looked at fruit and soil quality of organic and conventional strawberry agroecosystems. Same basic information. Let's see if I can read this. This was done September of 2010. Our findings show that the organic strawberry farms produced higher quality fruit and that their higher quality soils may have greater microbial functional capability and resilience to stress. Okay, now, why then do organically grown plants contain higher levels of these polyphenols? Because when you here's the answer. The reason plants produce these compounds in the first place is to defend themselves against pests and diseases. The more pressure from pathogens, the more stress, the more polyphenols a plant will produce. It's a defense mechanism. Plants being defended by man-made pesticides don't need to work as hard to make their own polyphenol pesticides. Coddled by us and our chemicals, the plants see no reason to invest their resources in mounting a strong defense. Do you see? Do you see when the organically grown fruit or vegetable is exposed to the elements to defend itself, it produces more of those phytonutrients, and then we eat that. And then we get to get the benefits of those foods, those fruits and vegetables. This is just a website about organics if you're interested, and if you want more, if you want my slides, just give me a call or email and I'll send you them. And this is just Sweetwater Organic Community Farm. This is in Tampa. This is both organic farm and a co-op right there in Tampa. We've been there, right, Mom? We've been to Sweetwater. Yep. It's off of Hillsborough. This is just another great website you can check out. A lot of really great information, reports called the Organic Center. So, according to the Baha'i writings, what will be the food of the future? Fruits and grains. The time will come when meat will no longer be eaten. Actually, and they go on about that. He doesn't forbid it. He says the time will come when meat will no longer be eaten. Medical science is only in its infancy. Yet it has shown that our natural diet is that which grows out of the ground. And again, it's not just about prevention. Abdu'l-Baha states that it is therefore evident. It is therefore evident that it is possible to cure. He doesn't say prevent, he says cure. By foods, aliments, and fruits. But as today the science of medicine is imperfect, this fact is not yet fully grasped. When the science of medicine reaches perfection, treatment will be given by foods, aliments, fragrant fruits. What do you think? Fragrant fruits. What's responsible for that fragrance? Polyphenols, phytonutrients. He knew, right? And by various waters, hot and cold in temperature. Well, I don't know a lot about that, but I do know this. When I have back pain, my massage therapist tells me to do hot, then cold, right? So, back to this slide. Hopefully by now we see that these can be tools for not mass destruction, but rather mass instruction. There's something to be said about moderation in all things. Tolman's law of pharmacology states that everything is toxic at some level, even air and water. Just because something is natural doesn't mean it's healthy, like alcohol, ethyl alcohol. Just because something is healthy doesn't mean you should eat a lot of it. This happens a lot, where patients tell me, oh, but I thought it was healthy. Yes, but not 3 gallons of it, right? It's a balancing act. What toxic substances or bad things do we need to get rid of? Other toxic elements sometimes that I discuss to a certain extent with patients are toxic thoughts. Constant shame, negative self-talk, toxic behavior, toxic relationships. Then what nutrients or good things do we need? And other things, healthy food, exercise, prayer, joy, laughter, clean air, sunshine. All truth goes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed. Then it's vehemently denied. But eventually, it's accepted as self-evident. Because truth always seeks its own vector. So, Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, states, Eat, O people of the good things, which God hath allowed you, and deprive not yourselves from his wondrous bounties. So eat. The bounty of good health is the greatest of all gifts. And most recently, I heard another quote which I really thought was very interesting, and it said, a healthy man has many wishes, but an unhealthy man or a sick and diseased person has only one wish. Some of my favorite online resources, PubMed, the world's largest scientific database, that's the website, or you can just Google in PubMed and it'll take you to the website and you can click. About 30 to 40% of all the articles there are free. The majority of them are not. Research generally is not free. One article alone is about $31. WHFoods.com is an excellent resource. You can learn about a lot of different foods and the nutrients and the different health benefits that they have. And there's another database called the Natural Medicines Comprehensive Database that is not only an excellent source of information about single nutrients, but they also tell you a lot about drug-nutrient interactions and this sort of thing. So, if you'd like more information, come visit us. That's my new place. This is Desiree. Desiree is my assistant, and she's a lovely, lovely person, a wonderful friend. This is her mother, Marlene. So I thank you so much for your time. This is my contact information, yes. Thank you.